G'day guys, welcome back to the Boundary Riders Podcast. I cannot remember the episode number and I've just had a big weekend, so we're going to get straight into it. Obviously a big weekend of finals. We had Carlton and GWS upset their opponents to send both Melbourne and Port Adelaide out in straight sets. Wasn't really upsets in my opinion. I think both of those teams had a big chance and they were able to beat their opponents very convincingly. And now they set themselves up for a chance to make the grand final, but they do have some tough opponents in the prelim. You can see on that's the right. Good job, Dylan. Or is it left? Whatever, it doesn't matter. But obviously you can see the next two games. The Friday night game is Collingwood versus the Giants, and Saturday, twilight basically, I think it's like 4:45, 5:15, is Brisbane versus Carlton at the Gabba. So we'll be getting into that today. We'll be doing the review of the second week of finals. And yeah, I think we'll start off with probably one of the big talking points, which are Port Adelaide and Melbourne going out in straight sets. I think it's very disappointing for both teams to have done it. I think they're on equal point right now of how disappointing it is. I mean, I get Melbourne probably, going out straight sets in two final series in a row now is very big. But Port Adelaide set themselves up at the start of the year to do some big stuff, towards the end of the season. And to finish fourth and then not do much with it is very disappointing. I think Port Adelaide should be winning this game at Adelaide Oval no matter who it was. They've had a very good run at Adelaide Oval this year, and they've just went up against the Giants and just got smashed off the park, really. I think they were lucky they only got beaten by 23 points in the end, because the Giants didn't kick straight. Neither did Port, but neither did the Giants. Port Adelaide, I think, kicked 1 goal 9 in the last quarter. That is just deplorable from Port Adelaide. They've got a lot of talking points to look through the off-season. They look like they're going to have a pretty good off-season. Jordan Sweet, Radicalea, but Brendan Turk-Thatcher, all of them have requested a trade to Port Adelaide, so that's good for them. But I think they have a lot more holes than just those key defensive spots and a ruckman. I think that if Zach Butters and Rosie are down, they have nothing in their midfield. And their forward line is very, I don't know, the word is it's not potent enough in my opinion. Finlayson looked out of it. I know he's had a lot of stuff on the off the field that he's had to deal with, which is understandable. But as a football player, he's been very down the past 8 weeks or so. And he played a terrible semi-final coming on as the sub. And I think it was just a very disappointing end to Port Adelaide's season. I do see some people saying that Ken Hinkley shouldn't have been re-signed. I think that's a tough thing to say. For the fact is that everyone was calling for him to be re-signed back in July when they were on their 13-win winning streak. And now that Port Adelaide go out straight sets in finals, maybe they should have waited till the end of the season to see if they should have picked him. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's many coaches out there who could have taken Port Adelaide right now, because I think they need a senior role. I don't know if Josh Carr could have came in right now and really done a lot. That's just my opinion. I don't know. But yeah, really, I think that Port Adelaide, very disappointing way to end the season, and I think they have a lot more talking points to go over because they've got a very weak depth pool right now. Their Sandford team got knocked out in the first round of the finals, I believe, in the minor league, and I think the Port Adelaide really need to seriously build up some depth in their, reserve stocks, because they are just going to get smashed off the park, as we saw, the last 8 weeks of the season, because they didn't have any depth through when they got injured. And yeah, I think Port Adelaide are in some pretty deep strife if they don't start building some depth in the off-season, training up these kids to play some real footy, because, I think they got really caught out in this last month and a half of the season, and very disappointing end. I know some people would have said that, Port Adelaide to make the top 4 was a big thing, and yes, it was, but, I mean, that was basically banked up. I think it's very similar to St Kilda, how they banked up the wins early. Not so much the Port banked them early, but they banked them mid-season, and then towards the end of the season, they obviously just dropped off the face of the earth, and that's why they had a good place in the finals, but it hasn't meant anything if you go out in straight sets. I mean, they might as well have finished 5th at this point, really, because they've done nothing. And don't worry, I'll be going on to Melbourne next. But yeah, Port Adelaide, very disappointing. And we'll see how they go next year. I think they'll be more than capable enough to go back into the finals. But they did have a pretty good run in the fixture. And, they're going to have some games at Adelaide Oval, which they should win. But I think they've got a lot more holes than just their tall defensive stocks. And yeah, and I will say another thing as well. I'm sure there would be a lot of you out there who watch the round so far on the AFL websites, on their YouTube channel as well. the AFL. I think it's. I know it's not the first. I'm not going to be the first person to say that Kane Cornes is biased to Port Adelaide. And I will say one thing. I think there are commentators around Australia who are very biased towards the Victorian teams as well. So I don't think it's. I don't have an issue with Kane Cornes being biased towards Port Adelaide. I have a problem with him not calling out the fact that they had a terrible final and they've lost two finals very convincingly, and he didn't go hard enough on Port, in my opinion. He's supposed to be impartial in the commentators, and maybe, I know my brother's not here, he's a Port supporter, but I think he would be just as disappointed to have gone out in straight sets than exactly as many Port fans are. They'd be asking questions. How has Ken Hinkley not got them to a prelim final here? They had a great chance against a team. The Giants are very good. They're in very good form, but they should be winning this game no matter what. There's no excuse for losing this game. They can blame the injuries all they want, but they had a team out there that should be winning this final. And, even if they got to the prelim and lost, which, let's be honest, they probably would have, but, they should be making the prelim from top four, and that's just very disappointing from them. Kane Cornes, as a person of the media, who, yes, I know this is Australian media, and sports media has gone the shitter recently. That's why a YouTube channel like us has actually grown recently than people looking on SEN and all that sort of stuff to look for trade rumours, because no one gives a fuck about SEN. They're not going to listen to a 3-hour show at 6 o'clock in the morning unless you're 55 and have AM radio. So, that's why people have moved over to things like YouTube and stuff to look at that. But still, you've got to have some credibility, and you've got to call out a team, no matter if you recently played for them or not. You got to call out that Port Adelaide played very poorly in both of their finals and have been smashed off the park and went out straight sets. Very disappointing, and Port fans should be disappointed. They shouldn't be saying, "Oh well, injuries and stuff were counted." Every team gets injuries around this time of year. Look at Collingwood; they went to a prelim. They've got a lot of injuries. Melbourne didn't even have a forward line. They got to the finals. There's a lot of teams that get injuries, and they still find a way. Look at the Giants. They've had to go to, they've won, 11 different venues this season, or 12. They weren't complaining once. So, every single team has problems, and you got to deal with them. And my opinion is that Port Adelaide came into this final series very defeatist and just acting like they were going to lose every game. That's how I feel. I felt like that was the media spin on it. I felt like Kane Cornes was definitely spinning it that way as well. Like, they're going to lose. It's going to be all over. They're not going to do anything. And the fact is that if you looked at that crowd at the Adelaide Oval, it was packed, but there was a lot of orange, and that was definitely Crows supporters who gone to the game to support the Giants. I will tell you that right now, because there is no way in hell at the Adelaide Oval there should be that many orange jumpers or orange shirts in that crowd. I think that is definitely, and that's another thing as well. I will say this is a little bit off topic, but whoever the media manager is for the Giants, he is an absolute genius. He has made this club one of the most favoured clubs in the AFL. And that's me coming from a Swan supporter. And by the way, you can bully me all you want. I couldn't find the other shirt, okay? I had to wear this today. It's hot in this room. Get over it. I feel free to roast me if you want to. I can take it. I'm a big boy. But yeah, whoever that Giants media manager is, he is a genius. I'd love to know who that is. That video that they put out with Cooper Hamilton was hilarious. Telling all the Crows supporters to go out and support the Giants at Adelaide Oval, that was hilarious. It was such good marketing, and it's the now marketing that you need to do, because teams don't want to sit there. People of the generation now, on the media aspect, they are very much locked into social media. They like the banter, they like the laughs. That's what this guy brings. I don't know who he is, but he is a fucking genius for bringing that to the AFL. And so many people are so scared to do it. Like, West Coast coming out mid-year and apologising for something to do with coming out and saying, because I think a couple of West Coast players came out and said that Jordan De Goey's hit was like, off, was a shocking look for the game and all that sort of shit. And then they apologised for it. I thought it was so weak. For the Giants to have this media person who just, they're having a laugh, they're having a good time. The memes that they put out, the different videos, they are hilarious. And people who don't even really follow footy that much, would see these sort of videos on social media and would just see it. And I'm telling you, this would be a great way for them to build their fan base off things like social media and stuff, because that's where everyone is now. They're looking at things like Instagram, like YouTube and Twitter and all this sort of stuff, they're looking at this and they would see little posts from the Giants and they're like, that is hilarious. I want to follow this team because they connect with the fans, they connect with people around Australia. This is so smart marketing from them. And, they're a favourite team of the Australia right now. If you saw that game, the crowd at the Adelaide Oval at the end of that game, they should not be having crowds supporting the Giants like that in big, pockets of the Adelaide Oval, supporting the Giants, because they've just rallied a presence on social media and people are following them and wanting them to win the premiership this year. And I'll see how they go. I'll be very interested to see if they post another video like that for next week, because I can tell you right now, if this guy's on the social media right now, he's looking for something to do. Every single person in the AFL who doesn't barrack for Collingwood hates Collingwood. They need to put out another video with another player of GWS or Cooper Hamilton if he wants to be in it, and say, guys, we know for 1 week we're giving you a pass to barrack for the orange team, the Giants. We all know that everyone hates Collingwood. Come join the Giants. They will have some fans there at the MCG on Friday night. And by the way, why the hell do they have the 6-day break? Why couldn't they have played on Saturday afternoon? That is so shit. I mean, Carlton would have had a 7-day break as well. But now they're giving Giants 6 and Carlton 8. I thought that was shit. But anyway. Still, Port Adelaide, very disappointing. They came into this final series very defeatist, and I was very disappointed by their performance on Saturday night. And yeah, that's probably all I've got to say about Port Adelaide. Now we get to Melbourne. Melbourne have been very disappointing. I didn't trust them to do much in the finals. I think I said that they could win it. And that was, I think, a dumb thing of me to say, I'm going to be honest with you, is because Melbourne don't have a forward line. I don't know why they're looking at Shane McAdam at all. They don't need a third tall. They've got Bailey Fritsch. They've got all these small forwards. Joel Smith is a third tall at best. He looked okay in the forward line, but he's a third tall at best. They need a key position forward. They should be looking at people like Mabu or Chol, not Shane McAdam. That is a stupid look for Melbourne to go for this guy. Look, he may be a very good player for Melbourne, but it's not what they need on their list. They need to be chucking money at key position forwards to get them to a premiership. They won a premiership off the fact that Tom McDonald was, kicking goals for him. He kicked 50+ goals in that season, I believe. And then they had Ben Brown, who really came into the finals and was giving them something to go to up forward. They have nothing to kick to now. They've got Joel Smith as their best option. And they are lucky that they have such a good defence that they can lock teams down and nearly win games off the fact that they, off a very small score. I think the highest score in the past 2 final series is 79. That's not going to win you a premiership. Not the finals are high scoring very much, but 79, that's not going to win you many games of footy no matter what. And they're out in straight sets again. That's very disappointing from Melbourne. And Simon Goodwin's got to have a lot of questions about that, because look, I don't think his job's under pressure by any means, but it's disappointing in 2 seasons in a row they've gone out straight sets in finals. If you can make the top 4, that gives you the best chance of making the grand final top 4 spot, especially a Melbourne team as well. You're most likely going to, even if you finish 3rd or 4th, you're most likely going to get a game at the MCG anyway. So, it's a home, it's not even an away final for you. So for them to go in that spot and lose twice again, they lost against Collingwood, best team in the comp, yeah. They lost to Carlton. They're in good form, I guess. Even though they should have really won this game, there's 2 games they could have won because they, both Collingwood and Carlton weren't really at their best, in my opinion. But they were able to, scrape home against Melbourne because they couldn't kick a score. And last season, they had the Swans in the first final at home, and they lost it. And then they had Brisbane, who have proven that they're not very good at the MCG, and they lost that as well. This is questions that Simon Goodwin needs to talk about with their preparation going into finals. They need to be looking in the off-season for a key position forward. Why are they looking at Shane McAdam? Why are they putting their eggs in this basket? Look, if he comes to the club, fair enough. But your first look should be going straight for a key position forward. I mean, for Christ's sake, they lured Stephen May from the Gold Coast. Why aren't they offering the big bucks to Ben King? Bring him to the club. I mean, I'm not saying he'll leave, the Gold Coast since Dimmer Hardwick's gone up there. But ask the question. Get him down to Victoria. There's been a lot of talk about him, earlier in the season about him wanting to come back to Victoria. And Melbourne should be one of the forefront teams looking for it. They've got a good resume. They've made finals for the last 3 years. They've won a premiership 3 years ago. They've made finals all of those years, he's never played a final for the Gold Coast. So get him to the club. And they're sitting there going for Shane McAdam. I know I keep mentioning this guy. And look, he may be a very good player for them if he gets there. But at the end of the day, that's not what you need, Melbourne. That's not going to win you. That wasn't going to win you that final. That was not going to win you that final. A big key position forward may well have. They may have been able to take some extra contested marks inside their forward 50. So I just think very disappointing. Brodie Grundy, happy to see him come to the Swans, it looks like now. Because again, this guy's getting paid a huge amount of money to sit at your reserve side. Stupid recruiting again. And again, last year, they needed a key position forward. They went for Brodie Grundy. They don't need another ruckman. Whoever is your recruitment manager for Melbourne needs to have a serious look at what they're doing, because the one thing Melbourne need is a key position forward to take those contested marks down the line, to take those balls forward and, kick goals. And Bailey Fritsch has been their, most potent forward for a couple of years now. And by the way, Pickett, pull your head in. What are you doing in that game? I saw that hit against Paddy Cripps. You were very lucky you got 1 week, because that should have been more than that. That was a shocking look. He was lucky that Paddy Cripps came back on the field, and he gave away so many free kicks in that game to just cost Melbourne. Really disappointing performance by him. Really disappointing performance by Melbourne and Port Adelaide, like I mentioned. And Carlton and GWS, all I had to have is praise for them, because they went out against these teams, and I don't think they were upsets, but they proved that they were the better team. And it shows that if you hit form going into finals, you can do anything from outside the 8. And I did say in the finals, I think this is the best chance for a team from outside the top 4 to win the premiership. And right now there are 2 teams sitting there who could potentially steal it from one of these top clubs. Because other than Brisbane, I think that Collingwood can be beaten next week. I'm sorry, but I think they're a chance, because they weren't that good against Melbourne. The only reason why they beat Melbourne was the fact that they couldn't kick a score. So at the moment, Nick Dacos will be back, so that's really good for Collingwood. I will be tipping them. We'll be talking about it a little bit later. But the Giants, they have a huge charge towards a potential first premiership, in my opinion. They are a big chance. And even though I'm a Swan supporter, and I know you're supposed to hate the crosstown rivals, which I do to a lot of an extent, but I would not be disappointed if the Giants go on to win this, because the marketing guy there is a genius. He's my new favourite person at the AFL. I love whoever that guy is. He is hilarious. And I hope we get to find out who this guy is, because he is a legend. And I'd really love to have him on the podcast one time, but I'm sure I never would. But if you're listening, bro, come join us, and we will make some memes together, because I think you are hilarious and the best marketing guy in the AFL at the moment. But let's go to the review of round 20, the semi-finals, and we'll start with Carlton versus Melbourne. As I said, we'll start talking about how good Carlton were. They did very well. They only had 18 scoring shots to 26, but they took their chances, and so many people are saying that Carlton shouldn't have won this game, Melbourne should have won it, they had it all day, and they just couldn't lock it away, and I agree with that. But Carlton just have not been able to be, they played some good footy in this one. Paddy Cripps, Sam Walsh, these guys were questioned at the start of the year, and rightfully so, but now they're standing up for Carlton in so many ways. May have been Sam Walsh's best ever game that he's ever played for Carlton. He was brilliant, kicked 2 goals, had about 35 plus touches or something. He was just brilliant. Paddy Cripps is really good, led it from the front as the captain. May have not have had that, may not have been his best game of his career, but I just thought that he was just massive. And Tom de Koning, what a game he played. I think that Harry Mackay, I think I mentioned it last week, Harry Mackay should not just be put straight back into this team. He is not what Carlton need right now. Tom de Koning is bringing that in spades. As a ruckman, he's playing a second ruckman role so perfectly right now for Carlton that he could definitely take them all the way if they can, muster up a big fight against Brisbane next week. Massive game from so many Carlton players. Melbourne did have a couple of good players. We saw Stephen May and Jake Lever at the back half. They did everything they could to keep Melbourne in it. It's just that there's not many others you can really look to say that Melbourne, couldn't lock this one away. I just don't know where Melbourne are at right now. We've talked about Melbourne enough, so, I just want to talk about how good Carlton were doing. They have just set themselves up so perfectly. They've made their run at the perfect time. You could definitely say that they have just scraped over the line in their 2 finals, and that is a fair enough call. They won by 1 goal against Sydney and a couple of points against Melbourne. But, if you can win you don't have to win by much in a final, win by 1 point. There's no percentage to look for. They've done what they need to do. They've been able to lock games away, which they weren't able to do last year, which was a big question mark against them. They won these games brilliantly. That movement in that last play, Melbourne couldn't get back. Carlton played it brilliantly. Blake Acres, what a steal of a trade that was against Fremantle. I can't believe Freo let him go for so cheap. That was dumb by them. He's playing some good footy, Blake Acres, and he's arguably... I know I keep on saying I mentioned this because I'm acting like I keep on sucking myself off. I'm sorry, but I think I said again, he's very important he gives them drive for Carlton, and he's very important, and he's been very important in this final series so far for Carlton. So you just got to give him a lot of credit, and you got to give him a chance next week. I mean, they're one of the best informed teams in the comp. I think Brisbane are best. Carlton are definitely up there with the Giants. I honestly, and I know there will be Collingwood people watching this, and I'm sorry, but I think they're the fourth best performing team at the moment. That's not to say that they won't win next week. I think at home, big crowd behind them, I think they'll get over the line. But I think Carlton and the Giants are definitely up there for best formed teams at the moment. Who is hitting fire right now? It's it's those two teams. So, you can't discount Carlton. And great performance from them as a whole. First time in 23 years they've made a prelim final. So that's massive for Carlton. And they deserve this win in the end. They were able to hold on in those stages when Melbourne looked like to take it away. And they were able to fight back late when it looked like all was said and done. So Carlton win this game by a couple of points. And you've got to give them every chance next week. The votes quickly. We gave 3 votes to Sam Welsh, 2 votes to Paddy Cripps, and the 1 vote to Stephen May. And now to the other game, which was Port Adelaide versus the Giants. We've talked all about Port Adelaide, how disappointing they were. The Giants, very good performance again. They just... I think it was mentioned in the broadcast. The Toby Green said that, this may not be the most talented team on paper and may not be the most talented team he's ever played with, but it's the most trusted he's been. And I can see that in spades. They don't have the best forward line, Jake Riccardi and Jesse Hogan, Jesse Hogan may have had a very good reputation at the start of his career, but has really dropped off since then. He's playing one of the nearly in career best form. I know he had a 60-goal second year when he played for Melbourne, but he's playing a selfless football game. He's not kicking bags of goals every game, but he really stood up in this one. He kicked a game high 4 goals. He was massive in this performance, Jesse Hogan. Toby Green, again as captain, stood up. Last quarter, took a great mark under pressure, nailed the goal. All around the ground, Sam Taylor and Jack Buckley, arguably the best defensive duo in the comp. And I think Sam Taylor only missed out on All-Australian because he only played 15 games. And I think you have to play 16. I think that's a bit crap. I think he should have made the All-Australian team anyway. But, I mean, that's fair enough. And Steve, he's playing some good footy. But even when Jack Buckley was there by himself throughout the year, he stood up so well. And then Sam Taylor's came back. And he just hasn't made any ripples in the defence. He's just slotted in nicely, and they're playing their role. And the Giants are just so good to watch. Now you may have seen that Cornelia wasn't mentioned there. He was best of field in this one. He has stood up so well. He must be such a resilient player because his career was questioned a couple of years ago, and he's just stood up. I've nothing but admiration for Stephen Cornelia. He's been a great footballer this year for the Giants. He's one of the huge keys for them, a potential, inaugural premiership for them. That I don't think that's the right word, inaugural. I mean, it is first, so probably. But Stephen Cornelia is a real chance. I can see him as a Norm Smith medalist, this guy. Massive performance from him, performance from the Giants. And they smashed Port Adelaide around a lot of the areas where Port Adelaide are very strong, like the midfield that have been this year at clearances and stoppages. They were massive, the Giants. And Tom Green as well, he was massive. All the role players like Bedford and Daniels. I know you could just point out a lot of points where the Giants could be, not as good as some other teams, poke some holes in their game, but at the moment, why would you? They are such good form, the Giants, and you give them every chance next week. We've seen back in 2019, they were able to go to the MCG against Collingwood and beat them. So why couldn't they do it again with a team that's playing so well coached by Adam Kingsley? And whoever has not picked up Adam Kingsley in the past, you are stupid. What are you doing? Adam Kingsley is just an absolute coaching masterclass at the moment. He's doing everything for the Giants. He's a heart and soul of the club at the moment. It's insane this club is, in a spot where this is the youngest club in the AFL at the moment. We know Tasmania is coming very soon, but they're the youngest club in the AFL, and they're one of the most loved. Can you believe that? It's amazing what they've done in the space of what? Not even 12 months, really. I mean, they finished with 6 wins last year, right down the bottom of the ladder, and now they're in a prelim final. You got nothing but admiration for this club. Sydney fan or not, you got to respect what they've done, the GWS Giants, and I really think they have a chance next week against Collingwood. But we get to the votes nonetheless. Stephen Coniglio got the 3 votes, like I said. I thought he was best to field. I know some people could say Toby Green, maybe Jesse Hogan, but I thought it was Stephen Coniglio. The 2 votes went to Jesse Hogan, and the 1 vote went to Toby Green. But those 3 votes, I think the whole 22 were massive for the Giants, and they just stood up when they needed to, and they're playing some really good footy. You can't discount them, and you got to give them every chance next week against Collingwood. But that is the review of the semi-finals, guys. So now we get to the tips for the preliminary finals. We start on Friday night with Collingwood versus the Giants, and what a game this is actually going to be. Both teams don't have the most, tall forward lines. They don't have the most power forward in the competition. So I think this is like a really good contest. A real hardened Collingwood midfield against a real, almost youthful GWS midfield. But there's so many people who can go through there and just give them a spark when they need it. Nick Dacos is back for Collingwood. That's been confirmed today. So today I'm doing this on a Sunday. I'll try and get this out on Monday, if not Tuesday. But, Collingwood, it's going to be hard to go against them here. They've got a huge break here. They've got a lot of players back. Interesting to see how Braden Maynard comes back, how he's seen from the supporters. Obviously, Collingwood, it will be flooded with the MCG Collingwood supporters, so it's going to be pretty hard to hear a bunch of booing. I don't think that'll happen. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how well he plays, Braden Maynard, coming back from, a lot of talk over the last few weeks. And I think that was definitely in the minds of the Melbourne players, which is why they were so undisciplined on the weekend. But yeah, Collingwood, I think this will be one in the midfield, in my opinion. I think that both defences are one of the best in the comp at the moment, now that Melbourne have been eliminated. I think this will be one in the midfield. Who can get the ball forward more, and who can take their chances. I think this is very even pegging, I'm going to be honest. I know they played once earlier in the season, but that was when the Giants weren't really in the best of form. If you're coming up a red-hot Giants with Collingwood, I give them every chance. I've mentioned that many times. I will be tipping Collingwood, though, because this is at the MCG, and 2, I think they're going to be rested enough now that the Giants kind of are going to hit the wall now. I think it will be close, but I think, because Collingwood don't tend to put teams away, but I think a couple of goals at the end of the day, Collingwood will win by. And the Giants, that's one thing that they did against Port Adelaide, which they can't afford to do against Collingwood, is they need to take their chances. They missed a lot of chances in this game. They had kicked, 12 goals, 17 or something. It wasn't a very good performance in front of goal. But it didn't cost them against Port, but it will cost them against Collingwood if they don't kick straight. So they have to perform well in front of goal, the Giants. But Collingwood, I think here, with Dacos back, I think that gives them a lot of more run in their midfield. They're very one-paced without him. But with him back, they should get that pace back in there. I just think that Collingwood will stand up in the big moments as well, which I don't think Port Adelaide really did, or St Kilda have done. I think they have probably the softest run so far of the finals, the Giants. So I think now coming up against the best, the minor premiers, I think Collingwood will end their run, which, I think it's probably fair enough if they make the grand final. If Giants beat them, they beat them. They deserve to be in the grand final, in my opinion, if the Giants win that. But I think it's fair to say if Collingwood make the grand final right now, it's kind of fitting. They've been the best team all year, so I kind of get it if they make it. But now we'll talk about the Brisbane versus Carlton final. This is going to be a big one. At the Gabba, we've seen Brisbane in the past make big finals at the Gabba and lose them. I think out of their past 5 losses at the Gabba, 3 of them have been in finals. So, the pressure does get to them at times. We saw in 2020 they had a prelim final. Everyone thought they were going to win and get a home grand final at the Gabba, which is, unheard of, obviously. And they choked against Geelong. It's going to be interesting because Carlton, again, are coming into some red-hot form. But I just think at this point, Carlton, there is a little bit of a hole in their game recently that we've known, and that is when Charlie Curnow doesn't get on the board, their score doesn't seem to flow very well. And Brisbane have a very good defence this year. They've got Jack Payne, who looks like he'll play. There's been some injury concerns. I think he'll play. Harris Andrews as well. I think Brisbane can hold up in defence. And if Charlie Curnow can't get on the board here, I don't know if they can kick a high enough score to beat Brisbane. Brisbane are one of the most potent forward lines in the comp. They're probably the best attacking team still in the comp right now, if not anyway. I think they're the best attacking team going into the final series. And I just think that Carlton can't stand up to that. I think that Brisbane can go and will win this game. I think it'll be a couple of goals. I'll say 4 goals. I'll say 24 points. I just think that Brisbane got that more potent forward line, and I just don't trust Carlton to kick a winning score here. I think against the Swans, they played really well in the first half, so they were able to hold them at bay. To when Sydney actually came back in the second half, they just were good enough to hold on. And Melbourne, as we saw, Melbourne couldn't kick a winning score. But I think Brisbane are the club that will be able to, I think they're the only team in the final series so far that's got over 100 points, I believe. So I think they're probably the best chance. Second. I think the Giants got it in the first round. But I know that Brisbane have kicked the highest score of the final series so far. So I think Brisbane are going to be a little bit too potent up forward. And I just don't trust Carlton to be able to kick 100 plus points here and keep Brisbane under it. So that's why I'm picking Brisbane in that one. I think both prelims are going to be some absolute massive games. But I do think we're going to be meeting a old rivalry, Collingwood versus Brisbane, in the grand final. When we've seen that, obviously, 2001, 2, and 3, all those 3 grand finals were played against these 3 teams, and Brisbane were able to stand up against them. That would be big if they were able to do it. I think it would be also really massive if Carlton and Collingwood went into the grand final. I think any matchup that we get in this grand final series, it will be massive. Giants make it, it would be I think it would be the Australian team. Everyone would be barracking for the Giants if you're not the supporter of the other team. I think Carlton, if they make the grand final, they're one of the biggest clubs, and going up against Collingwood, that would be such a big grand final. But if Brisbane made it, again, I think they'd be probably up there with... If the Giants don't make it and Brisbane do, everyone would be barracking for Brisbane, obviously. So I think this is a really massive massive grand final coming up. I'm really excited to see how it goes, and I will just quickly mention that that's pretty much all we're going to be talking about for the footy next week. Make sure to let me know down below in the comment section who you believe will be going on to the grand final, how the decisions will be made. But I will just quickly mention about the live streams that happened over the weekend. The reason why the final that I was watching for what was it? Melbourne versus Carlton. I only watched the first half because KO was down. I'm sure a lot of you would have known if you had KO that it was down for the first half. I got to the second half. I went to go check on it again and it wasn't working. And I just got to the point where I was pretty tired from work all week, and I was watching off my phone off some crappy website where it wasn't legal. I didn't say that. But it just wasn't that good. And I was like, I can't be bothered. I can't see who... Because I usually try to commentate the games because I think it's fun to do. And it's why else would you guys watch? Why would you watch me sit there going, oh my God, there's a play? I thought it would just be interesting. But I can't see half the players that are on the field. And I just thought it was really shit. So I was like, look, I'm just going to end it here. And I'll see you tomorrow. And then the Port game was going to come on and I fell asleep. So that was pretty unprofessional of me, pretty unprofessional of the channel. So I am sorry about that. But at the end of the day, I think the Giants, I think that would have been a good game to watch. And it would have been definitely a good game to commentate the Melbourne versus Carlton game. But, what can I do? I can't really fix KO for you. Very disappointing. If KO fucks up again, I'll be pretty close to I won't be cancelling it because, that's where I think it's the best sports streaming app in Australia, really. But... It's very disappointing if it fucks up again, and you want to be bloody ready to go because there's going to be some 2 massive finals, and I think it was a traffic issue, so hopefully it's fine, but don't sell as many subscriptions if you can't handle it, KO, so I hope it's all good there. Really appreciate you guys' support on the channel recently. We just ticked over 250 subscribers, so that's really happy. I'm really happy about that. My brother is too. There will be another trades video out this week, and... we've actually got some big talking points. Obviously, Brodie Grundy, it won't be long now before he requests his trade, I would assume. I'm pretty sure he's going to request the trade. I would be very surprised if he stays at Melbourne next year. Hopefully, it goes to the Swans. I'll be pretty happy with that. I think that's actually really good, and I've been thinking about it a lot the last week or so. I'm actually really happy with Brodie Grundy hopefully coming to the Swans. It's one of our big holes that we've left since Tom Hickey left. So that would be really good if we could get Brodie Grundy to the club. God, I hope Penn Mackay picks Essendon because I don't want the Swans to get him. I think he's a very overrated defender in my opinion. I hope we go for a player like Dougal Howard who's potentially leaving St Kilda. I think he's very good and we can get him for a lower price because St Kilda are looking to let him go. But that's just my opinion. So a new trade video will probably be out on Wednesday. Podcast should be out on the Monday like usual. And hopefully, if everything goes all well with KO on the weekend, we will be streaming both the finals, at least one, I'll say exactly. And I will just quickly say as well, unfortunately, I won't be able to stream the grand final because I'll actually be away. It's kind of like a honeymoon sort of thing, so, I'm obviously not going to miss that for a grand final. And my team's not in it, so I'm not too disappointed about it, but yeah, I mean, I'll be watching the game. I just won't be able to stream it because I won't be in front of my streaming setup. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully these weekend both preliminary finals are massive games. I hope they just get right down to the wire and they're just fun to watch, as most AFL games this final series have been. They've been very good to watch. I think every single game has been under 4 goals, so that's really good. I mean, a lot of final series in the past have just been absolute drubbings and blowouts for every single game, by 1 or 2. So I think it's been a very good final series, and it all comes down to 4 more teams in the final series: Collingwood, Giants, Brisbane, and Carlton. Thanks for watching today's podcast, guys. I can't remember what number it is because I'm so tired, but feel free to roast me in the comments, and I'll catch you all next time.